it's definitely, and are we part of the problem by covering it, as I've said before?
Yes, but it's fine. Yeah, but we're cool dudes.
Wow.
Hello and welcome to the Abroad in Japan podcast, probably the best way of learning about life in Japan without actually being in Japan. I'm your host Chris Broad, and we're joined as always by England's top Japan enthusiast, Mr. Pete Donaldson. Pete, how the devil are you doing? What's going on?
I'm good, Chris. We are recording this mere an hour since the Jake Paul and Mike Tyson boxing exhibition. And it was an exhibition at best. And I'm happy to report that last night I was doing some shadow boxing to impress my partner, and I threw out my shoulder. So my shoulder popped out, then popped back in again. And, that's just the ferocity of my boxing. I will punch so hard the air that I'll throw my socket out of the joint. So it's good stuff. I'm feeling great this morning.
I watched it as well, and it was pretty lackluster. Fair play to Mike Tyson for going back in the ring and doing it, admittedly for lots and lots of money. But, for a 58-year-old man to go in the ring is no small feat. And you kind of wish you could bring back the Mike Tyson from 1987 who would he'd bite people's ears off and kill them and do a rematch. It was a bit unfair, to take somebody who's that old and put them in the ring again, but he went the full 8 rounds. But yeah, I just went all these influencer boxing events. They're always a bit boring, aren't they? There's not much carnage. There's not much.
I think simply because a lot of them can't box all that well. I mean, I think Jake Paul's quite unique in that he's had all of the money to become the best boxer a rank amateur could ever be. There's no real excuse. That is basically what a boxer looks like if you take a man off the street, give him all of the training, all of the resources you can, and that's what happens. You become Jake Paul, and he's a pretty decent novice, but he's still a novice, and he's facing off against a 58-year-old retired boxer. So it's kind of like the things I've enjoyed about the whole debacle is that it's not furthering the sport, and it hasn't. None of these kind of boxing matches have. I would argue that your chess boxing match probably furthered sport more than the Jake Paul thing. I would rather watch a little bit of chess in the middle of the boxing match rather than whatever absolute nonsense was turned out about an hour ago. The thing about Mike Tyson is obviously. He's a thoroughly problematic individual, came from, nothing, but has conducted repeatedly his affairs in a really poor way. And that is that is me talking about something that can't be talked about on a YouTube algorithm.
But I only learned about that today, actually. I only learned about the darker stuff while I was doing my research. And
and it's not just one case, and it's a repeated allegations of taking place right throughout his career. I would say that this week his rather dark interview with a child amused me, simply because I've never seen anything like that before. Did you see that?
No.
A little child was interviewing him, and he just went into a really weird rant about when he dies, no one's going to remember him. And he just seemed very, very sort of like, when I die, I'm gone and nothing matters. And it was very like,
wow.
He seems to have problems with like sort of figuring out what's appropriate for children and not, and people who aren't children. Remember he got Hasbulla, the Russian UFC influencer, and thought he was a baby and started like kissing him and fighting him and stuff because he thought he was a baby, but he's a 23-year-old man. That sort of stuff I can get on board with, but it's not been a great weekend for boxing. Although the undercard was apparently quite good, which I didn't watch because I was asleep.
I mean, when I did the Ludwig event for 2 years ago now, actually, I mean, it wasn't billed as the fight of the century as this was. That's an important distinction, Right. Ludwig's
you didn't get 20 million.
No, I think I got enough to cover the airfare, and that was it, really. But it was really fun. I really enjoyed doing that. I can't believe it's been 2 years, and I do have a lot more respect for fighters and for boxers, having gone through what I went through in the training program and spending time with Nick, good old friend Nick, of Junk Food Japan fame, who's an incredible K1 kickboxing champion of Japan. And when you watch him fight, my God, that was the greatest thing about doing the whole chess boxing off camera for most of it. Training with Nick and hearing, his stories of how he'd taken on these fighters in front of millions in Japan, and when we were doing a few days before the chess boxing fight, I remember there was one of those, those punch bags where you punch it and it registers your score on the screen.
Right. Yeah.
All the fighters were doing it, and I did it, and it was like, your score's rubbish. And then he walked out, a real fighter, not an influencer, and he fucking hit it, and the whole thing like nearly imploded, and it was instantly like twice the record score that this machine had in 5 years, because his fists are massive and he can punch like. And I think that was the biggest flaw with my training. I only did 3-4 months of boxing training, which was my biggest regret, to be honest. Not that I had much time. I only found out I was doing it in August, and the fight was in December. My biggest regret, I didn't train more. I didn't take it as seriously as I should have. And, and I only really sparred with Nick. And Nick, you can't fight someone like that because he's just too powerful. And so I remember he was like, I'm going to hit you now the first time. I'm going to hit you now and it's going to hurt. I'm like, yeah, sure. I've been hit in the face in like 20 years. And he hit me not that hard by his standards. And it was like a flash of white light. And I was like, fucking hell, this is insane.
Did he ring your bell, so to speak? It was...
It nearly rang my brain damage. It was mental. But, so I do have a lot of respect for boxers. And I spent time with one of the cruiserweight champions of Japan, and I learned a lot from them, and I have a real respect for fighters now and everything they go through, and the self-discipline above all else that you have to enforce to do it. And I suppose if that's one thing you could say about Jake Paul, that he clearly has the discipline and he's clearly seen it through, but I would like to see him take on somebody his age at a professional level, and then watch him get absolutely demolished, as I suspect he would be, by a professional Olympic sort of boxer, right? But
I think he's only fought one boxer, hasn't he? And he got defeated. I think it was because the bloke out of Love Island. I think everyone else has been UFC guys who fancy a bit of boxing, but fancy a payday more importantly. But I mean, boxing's still not in a great place. However many times the sponsors and the promoters sort of say this is important for boxing because it gets bums on seats, gets people interested in the sport. Well, they're not really watching the sport, though, are they? They're watching it. When Tyson Lewis took place back in the 90s, there was a TV station called Live TV, much maligned kind of. It wasn't News International. It was some kind of terrible kind of sportsman, sports writer, sort of came up with this new TV station, and it was like it had stuff like topless darts. And had like a man with dwarfism on a trampoline doing the weather, and it was just like a joke station, basically masquerading as a like a TVM kind of news station. And one of the features when Lewis and Tyson, I think it was Lewis Tyson, were fighting in wherever it was, Madison Square Gardens or whatever. They had, because they obviously didn't have the rights, they basically had a bloke on the phone from the venue, telling somebody in the studio what was happening, and then that the man in the studio would basically commentate over the top of the boxing, and two actors masquerading as boxers would throw punches like what was happening in Madison Square
Gardens. Oh my
God. It was the stupidest little thing. I mean, it's a nice little kind of curio, but I would have rather watched that than whatever took place this morning, watching Mike Tyson in a knee brace kind of stumbling around. So, it's good stuff. Good stuff. I did, in my heart of hearts, I think last night I texted my mate, I said, I presume if this is, depending on how this is going, it looks like there wasn't an agreed finish, let's say. But I assume that Tyson at some point would have been told or paid to do certain things. But I would say I don't think you would trust Mike Tyson to follow those instructions. And I did think in my heart of hearts, he might just go mental and just beat the shit out of him. But obviously, time is a great leveler, and he's 58 years old. He's 30 years older than him, so yeah.
And they're clearly good friends off camera as well.
Right,
they're clearly good friends, and I think that kind of took some of the fun out because you kind of knew that. Oh, all right, they're not going to murder each other in the ring, which would have been
generationally. I think it was the whole spectacle was probably a big winner for Netflix because it's just men my age going, he beats that blowing avocado toast eating woke millennial. Well, he's not woke, is he? But do you know what I mean? It's that kind of vibe, isn't it? That our generation going, beat him. I hope he beats him up because he's young.
I was impressed. It was on Netflix actually. Yeah, definitely Netflix are the real winners of this whole thing.
Yeah. I think a lot of people who were complaining about the Netflix, sometimes the streaming isn't the best. Sometimes there's a bit of buffering because their servers really aren't built for this sort of thing. They sort of said, "Oh, thank God for the buffering. This is terrible."
Well, we've got a story this week back into Japan from Callum from Leeds. It begins LA Climatic Criscum Plonker P. Oh dear P. Early this year, I finished an 8-month trip of Southeast Asia, eventually arriving in Japan for a 2-month stay. I spent a week in Hokkaido, and having befriended an American man at a hostel, we decided to do a week-long train trip from the tip of Wakkanai all the way down to Kagoshima. My God, that's an adventure. We made several stops and enjoyed different parts of Japan. One of these was Morioka, which we quickly discovered didn't have much there. My friend had quickly booked a last-minute stay earlier that morning. As we walked in, I saw the faded old walls and realised we'd booked a local ryokan, something that had been on my bucket list. Eventually, after 6 minutes of repeating "sumimasen" ever more loudly, a little old lady waddled into the room where we stood. With our minimal Japanese, we tried to explain our reservation details and interpret the various instructions and rules that we were given. After about 25 minutes, we were in. She asked if we wanted yukatas, and of course we had to oblige. We found it to be quite a task putting these on. It's not that hard, bloody hell. And eventually she gave us some assistance, smiling as she helped us slide into our newfound drip. As we finished, she quietly said, "Chotomate," and made us wait. She returned moments later with 2 oranges and slid them into our sleeves, for what I could only assume is either a midnight snack or was to be used to defend ourselves from the local yokai monsters looking for tasty tourists. The old woman will forever stay in my heart as the nicest oldest woman I've ever met. She was so joyful and patient, especially considering we couldn't understand each other. Where in Japan have you had the most traditional of stays? This is Callum from Leeds, back home with his oranges. I don't know what that was all about. Have an orange.
Time. Have an orange, yeah. Wow.
Oh, man. I remember staying at a ryokan with Charlotte not that long ago. It must have been last year now, up in Tohoku, not too far from Morioka. And I can't remember if I've said this story before, but we sat down and the old woman was very happy that we could speak Japanese and had clearly, knew our way around Japan. She sort of sat down. And when you go into a ryokan, often you have to sit through like a fucking 5 to 10 minute lecture on how a ryokan operates.
Right, yeah.
And what you can do and what time things are, and it goes on quite a bit. She did that in our room. And then at the end she went, "Oh, I'm so happy you're not Chinese." And we were like, "What?" And she was like, "Oh, Chinese tourists. Gosh, it's awful." And she recounted some awful stories she had. And I was just like, this is a 4-star / this is a 4-star ryokan. You don't want to hear this as you're being checked in. Like, thank God you're not. It was just really weird, and I just thought really unprofessional.
My enemy's enemy is my friend. It's like my racist's racist is my racist. It's just very kind of like, oh dear, really that's gonna find its way onto the reviews eventually. Unnecessarily so.
And I know. There's problems with tourists going on and whatnot, and but it was just a bit of a weird thing to say. I felt it was quite inappropriate, but something must have happened. Something very bad must have happened to trigger that. So that was my most traditional stay.
Lovely,
borderline racist experience. I have had lots of good experiences at ryokans though, and they are magic. Never got any oranges there, unfortunately. Never got any oranges. So.
I find those hotels very peaceful. Are the older generation just always got a bit of fruit on them? Do you know what I mean? Is it like the Werther's Originals of the UK? Is it just old people have just always got citrus fruits on them? They've just always got the power of citrus in their bags.
Yeah, there's always a yuzu or a persimmon or a fucking apple. There's always some. I got cherries. It was the gift that I got when I went to a hot spring for an old man. Where do they keep them all? The elderly people of Japan, where do they keep all their fruit?
Up their sleeveys. Where do they keep their armies? Up their sleeveys.
Well, on the subject of bad tourism, naughty tourist, there's a story doing the rounds this week of an American man. He did something very silly, especially given he's 65, and you'd think at his age he wouldn't be this much of a dickhead. Fill us in on the story, though, Pete. What's going on at Meiji Jingu Shrine in Tokyo?
Well, I don't know about you, but when I go to on holiday, I deface everything I find. I sort of try to draw on everything. I try to scratch my name into stuff with my keys. I like to leave locks around with offensive writing on, all kinds of stuff. But this guy's taken it one step further in an atrociously interesting way. Police have arrested a 65-year-old American man for allegedly defacing a Meiji Jingu Shrine in Tokyo earlier this week by using his fingernails to scratch letters in a torii gate there. The American arrived in Japan for a holiday with his family, claimed he was writing his family members' names as a prank, according to the police. Right. He's suspected of using his fingernails on his right hand to carve 5 letters of the Latin alphabet in a space measuring roughly 5 centimetres by 6 centimetres on a torii gate pillar at around 11:20 a.m. on Tuesday. That sentence very much sounds like the most Japanese to English translation via Google I've ever heard in my life. He's suspected of using fingernails on his right hand to carve 5 letters of the Latin alphabet. But staff of the shrine discovered the damage later that same day, called the police, who arrested him on the following day. Now, if you've been to Meiji Jingu, it's very sort of spread out, and I didn't realise they had such amazing sort of CCTV around there, because obviously they picked this guy. They picked this because it doesn't look over CCTV'd, but clearly it is, because they managed to sort of locate this man hours after his little Wolverine claws got its way in with the Meiji Jingu torii gates. Amazing.
That's the bit of the story that doesn't make sense to me, though. Like, how did they watch the footage back and go, that white man there? And then how did they go from that to finding him and arresting him in a land where the police are often not painted in the best light for dealing with things? How were they able to pull that off? That's quite interesting.
I mean, he may have, if he's able to scratch his name into, maybe he has screwdrivers for hands, maybe he's Edward Scissorhands. He might be, I mean, Johnny Depp is cracking over 65. Maybe it was Edward Scissorhands, because I don't know how, I mean, I don't know about your fingers, but I couldn't, I mean, these are like heat-treated wood, like, you know, to withstand the weather and the rain and stuff. These torii gates have been looked after, and you know, I'm currently fixing a white picket fence at the front of my house. It's very much the ship of Theseus at the moment. I'm just cutting up big bits of wood to replace the ones that have rotted, and I could get my fingers through most of the posts on my white picket fence at the moment, because they're all rotten. But I don't know how this guy managed to get his fingernails deep into a torii gate, but he has, and good on him. Maybe it's his cork. People have cork fingers, don't they? They'll finger. Charlie's granddad on Charlie and the Chocolate Factory had one in the classic. You could clearly see he had cork fingers. But
that explains a lot. I mean, do you reckon the police were like, show us your fingers? And he showed them, and they were filled with wood and carving and shit. Red
paint flecks. I just did it as a joke, a little joke.
It's just weird. Like, at what point would you think that's a good idea? It's annoying. It's very annoying. You know, the shrine will be rebuilt anyway. A lot of these torii gates and things are replaced every few years, every 5 to 10 years. But it's more the sentiment behind it, isn't it? Desecrating a shrine that honours the spirits of the Emperor Meiji and his wife, built in 1920.
You're supposed to bow, aren't you? At the old torii gates, aren't you? Every time you walk through a torii gate, you're supposed to bow, turn around and bow at them. This guy just went one step further.
He did, and it's just annoying. It's just can't be doing with it. Why does this keep happening? And the other shrine that got defaced a few times this year was the Asakuni Shrine in Tokyo, right. The one that's a bit more interesting, the one where war criminals are enshrined and stuff, has been the focal point of all sorts of things going on.
Yeah,
like spray painted and whatnot, and
right.
Yeah.
It's a strange thing to.
You've been to the Asakuni Shrine? It's like
I've not been to. Where is that?
I'm not sure. It's just north of Chiyoda, I think. I've only been there once. I went to. There's a war museum there, and it's fascinating. It's like the war museum where the Japanese sort of won and ignored all the bad stuff. It is like, it almost feels like an alternate reality of Japanese history in some respects. Japanese history is fascinating, and how the 20th century is just like, and then some things happened, and then the economy got better, and it was good. And it's sort of like, you can watch in Japan how it's sort of conveniently left out 1932 to 1945.
Yeah.
You just skip that bit. Some things happen now.
I think I've said before, I used to work for a German company that was very, very light on facts in their PowerPoints. We were established in 1833. We provided... what happens in this little bit? No, we don't talk about that bit, thank you. Yeah.
Still, the UK is the same. The UK, we never learned about anything. And I worked with a good friend from Ireland when I was a teacher, and folks from Northern Ireland. And the Troubles, everything on that front, all the bad, awful things that happened in Ireland, it's sort of just like conveniently left out of the history lessons in the UK. And the UK, has done some awful things. But it's really important to learn about all the awful shit your country, no matter which country it is, has done. And to sort of go, let's learn from this so this doesn't happen again. And I feel like, that sometimes that in Japan it's just not taught, a lot of the bad stuff.
I mean, we've got with the horrible things that our empire's done around the world, but even quite recent stuff where I know more about the repeal of the Corn Laws and Robert Peel and stuff like that, rather than the slave trade that we were obviously a huge part of. Obviously we don't talk quite about.
It's a powerful thing, though, isn't it? When your country, you can choose what you teach your people, what they believe in. It's such a powerful tool, creating the store of your country.
Certainly, when you win, yeah.
It's a fascinating thing, and but it's not about shaming the current generations, being sort of subject them to ancestral guilt. I think more than anything, it's just looking at the lessons of the past, right, and trying not to make them again. And I feel like sometimes it's not great. I mean, Japan, great peaceful country, everyone's peaceful, but I think it would do well to sometimes take a look back at the past and things that happened.
I mean, to be honest, we've obviously gone through the remembering our war dead in Remembrance Day quite recently in this week, and watching people walk around with poppies with phrases like "never again" and all this stuff. It's like, it's fucking happening now, lads. You know what I mean? And we are literally involved in selling munitions, so it's I think it's a difficult thing to sort of difficult balance to strike. I think at this moment in time, when we are funding what can only be described as a genocide, so it's problematic. It is what it is, and I think education is so important. And when you sort of see what's happening around the world when it comes to changing the way the books that children are reading and the way that things are kind of being remembered, it's you're right. It's such an important balance to strike, and we should be better, and we should understand that it doesn't matter what's happened before. It doesn't reflect on what's happening now. You just need to improve and be more robust in your conviction morally. I think.
Yeah, I mean, history, powerful way of. I don't know. I love history. I spend a lot of time watching history channels, and that's probably the thing I consume the most after camera content. It's fascinating. It's
get on the old D-Max. I'm on the old D-Max, advertising Discovery Channel, the old D-Max. We're doing quite a lot of people digging for opals in Australia. A lot of people digging for gold and stuff. But then we've also got some World War II plane stuff, if you like that. So there you go.
Stick to the planes.
Stick to the planes, for crying out loud.
How do we go from old man digging his fingernails into a shrine to war criminal shit? But there you go. The fun of shrines and a man. And I did see a fascinating post doing the rounds of people doing sex crimes ignored. A foreign man digging fingernails into shrine gets all the attention. There was a few memes doing that. I did think, it's definitely. And are we part of the problem by covering it, as I've said before?
Yes, but it's fine. Yeah, but we're cool dudes.
But the 65-year-old man did a bad thing, and what a dickhead. I just hate that it happens, because then it's like, for fuck's sake, this will be brought up in all sorts of situations.
But there's just so many people doing... tourists, there's just so many of them. Do you know what I mean? And
30 million. 30 million.
Exactly. So what's your percentage there? Like, if you're going to sort of have that amount of money coming into the country, at some point someone will be a dickhead. I mean, have you ever sort of scratched your name into something when you've been abroad? I don't think I ever have.
I personally haven't. No.
No.
I wouldn't.
I never have
do
access to anything sharp. I never have anything sharp on me. Keys to hotels are usually cards. You can't use that. What are you going to do?
But this is the problem, though. I do. You got 30 million people coming in. Of course, there's going to be a few fucking idiots who do shit like this, and it's like, what about a nice story about the good tourists, like clearing a field or whatever they do? Maybe they don't do anything good. I don't know, but it would be nice to see that once in a while, because this did the rounds everywhere, and is what it is. Back in a moment, guys, with the fax machine. Your stories, comments, and questions this week.
Wow.
And we're back with a fax machine. What do we got this week from our listeners? Mr. Dawson, fill us in.
Hello, Emily has got in touch. Dear Cool Chris and Coolish Pete, I'm really looking forward to seeing Pete appear in a Brunch Band video soon. I'll be on one of the channels, I think, at some point. I've been learning Tai Chi and karate for the last 3 years or so. Would you ever learn any karate for a video together? Best wishes, Emily. Chris, do you want to see me throw a few haymakers? I presume the karate fraternity don't call them haymakers. But do you fancy me doing some shapes with my broken shoulder?
I'd like to see you take on Jake Paul, to be honest. The fight we deserve. That wouldn't last long, would it? Fucking hell.
He'd punch my head off.
I would love to do karate. I did think about that, because Nick, the aforementioned Nick, Nicholas Petas, great fighter. He's the karate master. I think he literally watched Karate Kid and was like, I want to do that. And then he moved to Japan and trained under like the most ruthless karate master of all time. And I watched a documentary of this man, and he's like, it's not simply enough to beat your enemy, you must kill them. And it's like, wow, fucking hell.
Oh, wow.
That's a bit strong. He basically lived at this school, and it's almost like a religion. You know, you wake up at 4 a.m, you scrub the floor, you do 200 press-ups, you all eat a bowl of rice, and it's like a commune, and it's ruthless, and it sounds awful. But he learned a lot from it, and he trained a lot, and I would love to see you go through that for 2 years and come out the other side a new man.
I went to one karate lesson and a boy kicked me. Did it. Like, I don't think in the first lesson of karate, when you're like, I don't know, 10 years old, someone should be jumping in the air and trying to do a flying kick on you. I just don't think that's part of the whole karate thing. But this kid was doing it, and I never did any more. I do find the idea, I just find combat sports very not underwhelming. I mean, quite exciting to watch, I suppose. But I just don't have that killer instinct in my soul. I don't have the feeling to dominate. I don't want to hurt anyone. I certainly don't want anyone to hurt me. And I just want to stay away from people. I'm going to live on an island by myself and not kick anything. All right.
It's a good thing, though. I mean, when I did my fight, I was up against that guy over at Flow, and he talked to me a lot before the fight, tried to get to know me. And Nick was like, whatever you do, don't talk to him, don't meet him, because if you start humanising someone, you can't.
Don't fall in love.
Well, you're not going to be as ruthless a fighter if you sort of like or know the person you're going to be fighting. And if it was someone that I despised, then maybe it would have changed my fighting style. Maybe I'd actually have been a lot more angry. So it kind of makes sense. It does make sense to hate your opponent before going into that environment. George from Ithaca in Greece. Oh, that sounds nice. Hi guys, my girlfriend and I finally did it. We booked our tickets to Japan for September next year. I'm knee-deep in planning, but face a dilemma. While we spend the majority of our time in the typical first-time places, i.e. Tokyo, Osaka, Kyoto, we want to add something that's a bit off the beaten track. I've been eyeing the Jigokudani Valley, Takayama, Kurashiki, Aoshima, and a stay over at Miyajima, with the hope of seeing a wild tanuki. But with just 14 days in the country, we can only choose one more stop. What would you guys suggest? Thank you both. George from Ithaca. I mean, they're all very mainstream tourist places, so none of them are off the beaten track. Except Aoshima, maybe. Aoshima. Where's Aoshima, Pete? Do you remember?
I'm looking at... Is that like...
Annoyed. I should know this.
I think Aoshima is near Kagoshima, isn't it?
Oh, it's the bloody Cat Island we mentioned like a few episodes back. Oh, don't go there.
Is it? Okay.
It'd be boring. It's just... I love all of these places, but they're not off the beaten track. If you want to go off the beaten track, go to bloody Miyazaki or something, or go to Kagoshima, which is amazing, but not meant to go there.
Miyazaki is very close, isn't it? I suppose next to Aoshima. Like I loved Aoshima. I don't think did we even get onto the island? Is it the island one that's kind of?
I've never been.
It's like it's on a bridge. I think it's down sort of past Miyazaki. And sort of over the landmass from Kagoshima. So like from Kagoshima up to Aoshima up to Miyazaki. I remember playing golf. Putt golf at Aoshima, waiting for the train to arrive, and I very much enjoyed that part of Japan. But it's quite sleepy. Would you say that it's definitely that touristy? I guess it's just kind of like the south bit of Kyushu, I suppose. It's kind of not everyone goes there, I suppose, but I liked it very much. If you want a nice relaxing kind of stroll around, I guess you got to choose your times because it can get very, very hot.
Yeah, I mean, September next year, it will be pretty hot.
Right,
Kyushu's pretty screwed.
Why are the Japanese obsessed with tanuki? Tanuki are everywhere. The little statues, and they've always got little titties, little tanuki titties.
They are very graphic.
Why are the pictures of tanuki so very graphic, Chris? Why are they so sexy?
I don't know. I've always wondered this. You can see everything. I mean everything on the little tanuki statues. It's pretty
everything.
Graphic. I would say I don't know. But if you do want to go off the beaten track, I've been thinking it through, and I recommend Aomori because I love it. Filmed a lot of videos there, but nobody ever goes there, and lots of things to do.
I get Aoshima, Aomori sort of mixed up, really. So I don't really know where Takayama is.
It's in central Japan. It's really nice, really beautiful place. Just got back there with Charlotte, actually. Got one last question from Michael from Perth. This is Ali, Chris and Pete. Japan has long been at the top of my travel bucket list, and I hope to visit the country later next year. I'm a really tall guy who stands at around 2 meters or 6'7". I already face a few challenges in my corner of the world, and I'm expecting even greater challenges when I visit Japan. Our door frame's lower than in Western countries. Will taking a taxi or public transport be a challenge for us? We've said this before. Generally, and this is Michael from Perth. I think if you're 6'7", the only thing you'll struggle with is like capsule hotels. Your feet probably won't fit. Other than that, you'll be all right. Although maybe domestic planes might be a bit of a problem, but you'll be all right. You'll be all right.
You'll be fine. I would say if you get like a quite cheap hotel or Airbnb where they've got those kind of, there's like bathrooms that are all in one kind of setups. They're like you get a little shower and a bath, and you get a sink, and that's it. And it's all kind of like prefabricated, kind of in there, in 2 or 3 bits, and your plumbing's in, and you're there. I would say those baths, you're not going to have a good time in those baths, and you're certainly not going to have a good time in the shower. So they're not built for you. So if you were going to, I'd push the boat out, so to speak, for a slightly larger hotel, I would say, just to give you the best chance of enjoying washing your massive body, Michael.
And you might get a lot of people look at you as well in more rural areas. Yeah. They'll probably stand out. A good friend of mine was very tall, and he always got a lot of comments, but yeah, you'll be all right. Have a good time. Keep the stories, questions, comments coming in, guys, to BroadJapanPodcast@gmail.com. We'll be back later in the week to do it all over again. But for now, don't go and fuck any shrines up, and we'll see you right back here to do it all over again on the Broad Japan Podcast. Bye for now.